Welcome back to another video and welcome to May wrap up and then picking of the June TBR. This month I ended up reading 8 books, very good for me. I feel like I'm upping the amount of books I read, which is really quite nice, and it was quite successful, I can't lie. Really good, quite a good month I would say. A lot of anticipated reads I was intending on reading, so that was really nice to tick a lot of them off. But let's just get right into it. The first book I read this month was The Adventures of the Wishing Chair by Enid Blyton, which was on my May TBR, and I ended up rating this a 3.25 star. I was really intrigued going to this book because I loved The Magic Faraway Tree. I was super intrigued by it, I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to read some more of her books because I really enjoyed her writing. And even though she's like a children's book author, I would say, her writing is quite sophisticated, I think personally, so I really enjoy her writing style, so I was really intrigued to get into more of her work. But yeah, 3.25. I was a bit disappointed with it, but equally it is a children's book, so I've got to like take it with a grain of salt. Like maybe it's just not my kind of book for that moment because I'm an adult obviously. And yeah, it basically follows Molly and Peter, who are siblings, and they find this chair that in their playroom that is a wishing chair, and it can take them to all these different lands. And it's literally pretty much the exact same premise as the Magic Faraway Tree. Like they go to an individual place and like all this magic starts to arise. It's kind of the same premise, but yeah, it's just a wishing chair. It's obviously extremely repetitive, which is so strange for a book that's only 183 pages, but it was so repetitive to the point I was like, can we just get on with it? Like, you're going to so many different places, maybe, I don't know, they could have made them stay in the place a bit longer or like something, but a lot of the places something would occur that got them into a bit of strife or something. But they also rescue a pixie friend, can't remember its name. So they're traveling around on this wishing chair with their pixie friend and themselves. So yeah, it was like a good classic read. Definitely would read it to children, obviously. But I am intrigued to read the rest of the books in this series, just to see if I maybe enjoy them as much as I enjoyed The Magic Faraway Tree. But first book on the May wrap up was The Adventures of the Wishing Chair by Enid Blyton, which I rated a 3.25 star. The next book I read this month was Vanishing Girls by Lauren Oliver, which I ended up rating a 3 star. Had like relatively high expectations for this book because the blurb on the back sounded right up my alley, sound like a thriller kind of mystery, but I was extremely let down because I soon found out this was I think a literary thriller, which I've never read before. I'm not good with genres and stuff like that, like I've never been good with them. But yeah, this was classified as a literary thriller, and I wish it wasn't. Like I wish it was just, if it's gonna be, like obviously a literary thriller, it needs to have a lot of like backstory and stuff for the literary aspect. But this one, I was like, oh, it was barely thriller, mainly literary, and I'm really hit or miss with literary genres. Lately, honestly, I've been loving them, so like it was kind of surprising I didn't enjoy this one really at all. But it's restart. It's basically about 2 sisters, Dara and Nick, and they're like were inseparable. But then it starts going between the past and the present, and in the past an accident occurs and one of them is left like scar-faced, and then in the present they're not speaking, and Nick is trying to figure out like why Dara hates her so much. But when Dara ends up vanishing on her birthday, Nick is like so extremely worried and is like, what is happening? And just a lot of mysteries get uncovered. But like when you're really reading this book, the whole book's a mystery, like because you don't actually know what's true and what's false. I'm not gonna lie, what actually was occurring was kind of wild to me. I did not expect it, and I really want to tell you, but I'm not going to, because if you want to read this book, you need to find out on your own. But yeah, 3 star, wouldn't really recommend it. Yeah, just not really my kind of thriller, unfortunately. The next book I read this month was our May book club read, and who picked this? Lacey picked this, I believe, and that was Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber, which I ended up rating a 4.5 star. I really enjoyed this book. It was very, if you've read like House of Hollow, me and Brady were saying, if you've read House of Hollow, it's very much the same like eerie kind of vibes to it, and I was not expecting that because she's the author of the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and the writing was completely different, so I was really not expecting that. So if you're going into this book going, I really like the writing in that, so I'm probably going to love this, maybe don't, because they're very different, completely different kind of writing styles. This it would say is a lot more eerie and just like kind of unsettling kind of writing style almost. It's very creepy, personally. That's what me and Brady thought, and we both read House of Hollow, but that's also probably why I loved it so much, because I loved House of Hollow. It follows Holland, who she is in a class that teaches local legends and urban myths, and the woman that teaches is literally called the Professor, and all these classes you have to find them yourself, and like it's a kind of a mystery kind of class, and if you can't find it, basically you can't go. And all the students pretty much think the topics of discussion are definitely myths, but Holland's the only one that really doesn't think it's a myth, and she believes that every story in it is real and like the magic is completely factual. So she goes on like a search for the truth to find out if if the magic is real, like devils and all that kind of stuff is real. But in return, she finds a new world and an ultimatum hidden in Los Angeles. Now in this new world, she's trying to find out if things are factual, and she's finding out that everyone in this world is kind of untruthful, and she finds out stuff about her own family that she didn't initially believe. I believe she initially goes into this world because she's trying to find, I think, the Watchman. And when you find the Watchman, they kind of tell you, I can't remember exactly, but they will tell you eventually how you're going to die and when you're going to die if you go to this man. And she goes to this man or woman, I don't know, with that Watchman, I'm assuming, with the guy she's dating at the time. And then he later rings her and goes, I'm going to die if I don't do this task. And my task is to kill you, and if I don't kill you, I'm going to die. And that's the beginning of the story, really, because after that happens, she completely believes in magic because the boy she's dating ends up passing because he doesn't kill her. So she's trying to discover all these things, and she's trying to find the alchemical heart. That's what she's trying to find, but so are a lot of other people, and there's really no one to trust. I'm really not describing this very well, but it's very mystery, fantasy, eerie vibes to it, and I really enjoyed it. I did think I was going to rate it a 5 at one point, but what's the point? Because towards the end I started like thinking some of the things that were being written was kind of unnecessary. I didn't really need it. But yeah, 4.5 star for Alchemy of Secrets, and I would 100% recommend this book. The next book I read was also on my May TBR, and that was The Year the Maps Changed by Danielle Binks, which I ended up also rating a 3 star. I'm not gonna lie, didn't really want to read this book. Brody got it for me a few months back because it was based in Sorrento, and it's obviously close to home, and I've never read a book about the peninsula, obviously, because I don't really think there's many books along that line. But this, I was like, I didn't have high expectations to begin with, but equally even my low expectations weren't really met. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I just was very bored, to be completely honest. But basically it follows a girl, Fred, her family. Her mum's dead. She's living with her adoptive father, Luca, and she was always raised by her pop, but her pop's been put into like a hospital, I think, because he's So he's in there for a while and then he comes back. But she's living with her adopted father, Luca, and then his new girlfriend and her son. And the family's a mess and no one's really listening to Fred. And yeah, she feels just very lonely and she's missing her mum, she's missing her pop, and no one's really truly understanding where she's coming from, and she's kind of being left out. They live in Sorrento and it is 1999, so it's when, like, she feels like her life's falling to pieces, but whilst that's also happening, a group of Kosovar Albanian refugees are brought to the safe haven not far from Sorrento, so she's like really like intrigued by them, and she doesn't really understand that whole, like, she doesn't really understand what's going on with them, but their fate eventually becomes intertwined with Fred and her families, so that she's like trying to kind of help them the best way she can, but obviously she's a child. But yeah, it's just about the refugees coming to Sorrento, and eventually they become intertwined with Fred's family. That's like the whole premise, but I feel like the refugee aspect didn't really happen until like over halfway through the book, or not like heavily at least. So I was kind of not interested because I just didn't really care about Fred and her family, not gonna lie. She was just like, I understood where she was coming from because I feel like she was being mistreated a lot by the people she was living with, which is unfortunate. Like, mistreated in the way she was like really left out and she was always in the wrong and it was never them. But yeah, I didn't really think I'd enjoy this book too much to begin with, but yeah, 3-star I feel like is a good rating because like I didn't hate it, but I really didn't even find myself wanting to read it at the same time. But for the year the maps changed, I rated it a 3-star. The next book I read was also on my main TBR, and that was The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris, which I rated a 4.5 star. I was so excited to get to this book. I was really intrigued. It's on my 26 books I want to read in 2026, and I was, yeah, really, what the hell, Roald Dahl wrote a comment on the back, that's so rude. I was really intrigued because obviously this is like a huge movie. Like, I feel like even if you haven't read it or watched it, you've probably heard about it at least, even if you don't know the storyline, which is the case for me. But basically a killer is like attacking women all over the United States, and the only person that the FBI believe can really help them is Dr. Hannibal Lecter, who is incarcerated in a hospital for the criminally insane. So he's a nut job because he's also a killer, I believe, or he's, yeah, a homicidal genius. So they go to him for help to hopefully prevent the murder of any other young women. And it follows the main detective, Starling, who I don't believe she's not actually a full FBI agent. I think she's studying to become one. She's at like college for it, I believe. I don't know, she's not a full FBI agent. They only get her to begin with because she's really good at that kind of thing, so they get her to talk to Hannibal Lecter, and he kind of is, it seems like he's like kind of a bit infatuated with her because she's a woman. He loves women anyway, it's really weird. But yeah, as the story goes on, she's an FBI trainee, sorry. As the story goes on, he does help in ways but also makes things a lot more difficult, and it's just a very creepy book, very eerie, very and he is just such a nut job that he's like he has also killed lots of people in the psych hold, and he killed inmates, he killed nurses, like he's insane too. So obviously they need help from the criminally insane, but they're also trying to stop the criminally insane, so it's just like this big old mess. But very intriguing, the whole book. I didn't really know what was going to happen. It didn't really wrap up in a particularly positive way because in the end he ends up escaping, so that obviously wasn't great, but how he escaped was like actually kind of mind-boggling. I was like, wow, this just proves how much of a genius you are, because the reason he got to escape so easily was because they thought they caught him, but it was actually a police officer that he had killed as well. So it was just, yeah, that whole part of the book was really intriguing because it just showed how smart he actually was and how he had fooled literally everyone. So I can't wait to watch the movie. And I do have Red Dragon, which is the book before this that you can read as well, so I'm gonna get to that eventually, hope soon. Yeah, I'm really intrigued to watch the movie, and I'm glad I got to this because now I know what all the hype's about. And yeah, Silence of the Lambs, I rated a 4.5 star. Unfortunately, the next book I've read is the lowest rating book I've had so far this year, and so far in a very long time, and that was Murder at the Beach, which is a classic mysteries for summer by multiple different authors. I'm not even gonna, there's lots of different authors, and I rated this a 1.5 star. So I initially got this book because, I mean, look at the cover. The cover's amazing. I need to stop doing that. I do judge a book by its cover a lot of the time. I go, oh, it's a pretty cover, maybe I should read it just because it's a pretty cover, which I need to stop doing that because some of my most favorite books have the ugliest covers. So gotta stop doing that. But yeah, 1.5. Basically, this whole book is written, every chapter is written by a different author, and they're kind of uncovering all these mysteries and like murders in this beachside town. And I just was so incredibly bored. I think it's because it was kind of confusing to go from one way an author had written to another way a different author had written. I didn't like that at all, and I just didn't want to read. I think I did read it at the wrong time because I don't even think I wanted to read it at that point. I just did because it was a shorter book, but I was not interested in this at all. I thought it would be very, very mystery heavy, and I don't believe it was, like, at all. So that did let me down. And yeah, this is like a whole series. There's like Murder in a Heat Wave, Murder Under the Sun, Murder Takes a Holiday, Murder in the Midsummer. Like, I won't be reading them, unfortunately. Can't be that popular anyway because it's not even on Fable, this book. Like, I had to use a different book title, but 1.5 definitely wouldn't recommend, unfortunately. The next book, on the other hand, I read was The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom, which is also the author of Tuesday's Maury, which I read last month, and I loved it, and I rated that a 6. And this I rated a 5 star as well. Loved this book. I was so excited when I found this book because I'd never even seen these books in person. So I found this at an op shop and I was ecstatic. Again, I need to stop with the high expectation, but I went into this book with extremely high expectations because I loved Mitch Albom's writing in Tuesdays with Maury, and that was a 6 star read for me, and I was so excited because I knew this was his other really popular book. So I was like super intrigued to read it and get to it and just see how different it was to Tuesdays with Maury, because I believe both of them are based off real people, but this one has more of a fictional aspect to it compared to Tuesdays with Maury, which is completely like follows true events. Whereas this one, I believe, I'm not sure, I'm gonna have to look it up, but I believe it's based off a person, but like has fictional aspects to it. I'll explain. Basically, Eddie is a war veteran who has been like trapped in the toilet of his father's life, and he's been working at a seaside amusement park fixing rides for like his whole life, basically, purely because he was taking over from his father. Then on his 83rd birthday, he is trying to save a little girl from like a falling ride, and he ends up passing away. So that's like how the book starts. It starts from the ending, and I think that was the best way it could start because I didn't really need too much backstory because you get like all the backstory throughout the book, which was really good, I found. But basically, when he gets to heaven, he meets 5 people, and each of these 5 people will give him a life lesson or like give him some sort of knowledge that will help him continue throughout heaven with like a sense of ease over him. I found this part of the book really good. He meets 5 different people, but depending on when he knew these people, he'll kind of in some way return to that age. So the first person he meets is a man that died in like a car accident from like a heart attack. Now, Eddie doesn't know who this man is. So the whole point of him meeting him is because when he was younger, he lost his like ball, ran out in the middle of the road to retrieve it, and the car drove past, almost crashed, and that in turn gave the man a heart attack because he had so much adrenaline and stuff. that's the only way they knew each other. So when he was younger, and then he went to this man's funeral with his parents, but he didn't actually know who he was. But it's saying how he's like running around in heaven, like he's got like so much energy and he's running around like a child because he was a child when he knew this person. So that's like the first person he meets in heaven. I won't go into depth of what each of these people is to him, but the next person, he sees his captain from war. Then he sees his, I can't fully remember who he sees. Then one of the people he meets is his wife and a little girl from the war he also meets. I can't remember who the fifth person is. I apologize, but if you read the book, you obviously know. But each of these people, yeah, is teaching them something. He needs to ease the pain, or just to understand his life a bit better. But I'll read you some of the quotes because he has a way of writing, I can't lie. There are no random acts, that we are all connected, that you can no more separate one life from another, that you can separate a breeze from the wind. We think such things are random, but there is a balance to it all. One withers, another grows, birth and death are part of a whole. That's what heaven is, you get to make sense of your yesterdays. Sacrifice is a part of life, it's supposed to be. It's not something to regret, it's something to aspire to. Little sacrifices, big sacrifices. Sometimes when you sacrifice something precious, you're not really losing it, you're just passing it on to someone else. Holding anger is a poison. It eats you from inside. We think that hating is a weapon that attacks the person who harmed us, but hatred is a curved blade and the harm we do to ourselves. Which I definitely agree with. People say they find love as if it were an object hidden by a rock, but love takes many forms and it is never the same for any man and woman. Lost love is still love, Eddie. It takes a different form, that's all. You can't see their smile or bring them food or tousle their hair or move them around a dance floor, but when those senses weaken, another heightens. Memory. Memory becomes your partner. You nurture it, you hold it, you dance with it. Life has to end. Love doesn't. And yeah, loved this book. Definitely see why this isn't his other highly rated book because I couldn't fault it. I absolutely adored it. And I don't think me going in with high expectations ruined it at all. I think it actually made it better. So definitely, if you've read Tuesdays with Morrie, or even if you haven't, I definitely would recommend reading this as well. So 5-star for the 5 people you meet in heaven. Now the final book was also on my May TBR, and that was 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I know I said I shouldn't go into books with high expectations, but I did with this, and I almost thought that would be ruining it. But I think going into this with, it was kind of hard not going into this without high expectations, because whenever people talk about Stephen King books, they always talk about this. So I knew I'd probably like it at least. I'm glad I loved it as much as I did. So 5-star for 11/22/63. You'll hear me talk about this a lot more in another video I'm currently filming, but I'll give you a basic synopsis. So in 2011, Jake Epping is an English teacher, and one day his good friend Al, who works at this like diner, comes up to him and is like, I need your help, like I'm dying, you need to come with me, I need to show you something. And he shows him down these stairs that leads to back into the 1950s. And he basically says, I want you to go in there, I want you just to see what this place is about, and then I want you to stop the assassination of JFK. Now immediately, obviously, Jake's like skeptical, he doesn't understand what this world is, but he goes into this world and eventually agrees to help do what Al wants him to do and stop JFK. So I'm gonna preface this by saying there's like 3 main things that Jake wants to do in this world, well, needs to, I guess. The first one is at the school he works at, I think it's like a maintenance worker or something, or someone that writes an essay. I can't remember if it's a student that writes an essay or the mentor. Anyway, someone that he knows from 2011 informs him that his whole family was murdered in the 1950s by his father, and he was the only person remaining out of all his siblings and his mum. So one of the things that Jake does when he goes back into the 1950s is he stops the man from killing this family, and I believe he kills him. So that's the first thing. And then the other one is he starts dating this woman called Sadie in like the late 1950s, and he's like dating her like pretty much the entire book. And she's a school librarian that Jake also ends up teaching at in the 1950s. So she's a librarian, he's like an English teacher. They meet, they start dating, and then she has an ex-husband who is a nut job, and he tries to kill her, and Jake ends up stopping him, and she ends up just with a gash on her face, a severe gash, but it's not death. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is stopping JFK. So he is there from, I think, I'm gonna have to put the actual date, I can't remember. It's between 1956 and 1958. That's when he arrives, and he's there until like 1964, maybe end of 63. Like that's how long he's in this world. Now, when he's in this world in 2011, it only passes 2 minutes. No matter how long you're in that other world, when you return, it will only be 2 minutes past, but you will have aged however long you were in that. Hence why Al had aged so much and Jake didn't understand why. It's because he was in this world for so long and then returned 2011, but it was only 2 minutes later. So they're like the main things in this story. It did not end how I thought it would, even remotely. So I was really, really actually happy with how it ended, because it showed no matter how many things you change, like sometimes those things are necessary to like the development in a lot of people's stories, even if they're negative things, sometimes that's necessary. So he did do a lot of good, but it ended up causing a lot of bad, so he had to kind of like change it back. So you can leave and come back, but it will always reset. So no matter if he stopped the murder of this family and left, if he came back, it would have reset, and he would have had to stop the killing again, because it would have, him stopping it would have never happened, kind of thing. But he finds out at the end that all of these there's so many strings connected, so even if he stopped it and it reset, there's still all these strings connecting it, so it's not necessarily a good thing. Basically, he was doing the right thing, but unfortunately ended up having a lot of severe consequences, so then he had to end up undoing a lot of things. So it didn't end how I thought, but I'm very intrigued to watch the show to see like the similarities and differences. But I see why this is popular. I will say though, if you are a history buff and you're like really into like all like just like, you know, presidents and JFK and like just a lot of things in history and like the 60s, 50s, all that stuff, you will devour this book even more than I did. You will love it because it's very history based for a decent proportion of the book, which I hate history. So the fact I even enjoyed it was kind of surprising. 5-star for Stephen King's 11/22/63, and I definitely see why people really enjoyed it. And I haven't actually read a book that's more, I would say, more serious and more, well, it's true, isn't it, than this. A lot of the Stephen King books I read are quite scary and like fairy tale kind of vibes, whereas this definitely had a very like eerie kind of feeling a lot of the time, but there was definitely more of a serious take on a lot of his books, which I really enjoyed reading something different from him. So these are the 8 books I read in May. A great reading month. Had some of my highest rating books, some of my lowest, but what's not to love about different ranges in book ratings. So these are the 8 books I read. Now we get to pick my June TBR. And for my June TBR, I'm actually going to get Mac to pick. Now you'd be like, how are you getting Mac to pick? I'm going to read a prompt, pick some books for that prompt, and put a treat on each book, and whatever book he picks is the book I'm going to read. Thanks to Lacey for this suggestion. I thought it was genius. I've got my guest of honor. So now we're going to pick, I think I'm going to do 3 prompts him doing it, and then I'll do 3 myself, because I don't think he's going to sit here for too long. First prompt is, the title starts with a the. Okay. I'm gonna pick 3 actually. So I'm just gonna look and then pick 3 books that start with the fifth wave. Okay, I've got my options. I'm gonna pick out of his. I'm gonna put a treat on 4 different options, and then we see what he picks. So I have the fifth wave, the secret garden, and the book thief. The good thing about this video is I just get to pick options I want to read, and then he gets to pick. But anyway, so I'm gonna put a treat on each of these, and then we'll see which one he picks. Okay, go. The book thief it is. Okay, the first book on my June TBR is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I'm really intrigued to read this. I'm not gonna lie, I've heard everyone loves it, so I'm really hoping I enjoy it as much as everyone else does. But thank you, Mac. This is the first book on my June TBR. Next prompt is popular book. Okay. Can do Diabound by Sable Sorensen, which I was meant to read last month. I didn't. Emma by Jane Austen, which I really want to read. Also could do Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which I also really want to read and need to read this year. Or I could do Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, which I also really want to read. So these are going to be my 4 options. We can see what one Mac picks. I'm going to leave them there and then I'll get him because he's not going to be happy. So I'm going to do the next one and then we'll do them both. A book you bought in the last 5 months. Okay. Have Dracula by Bram Stoker. Never by Jessa Hastings, which I really want to read. Maestra or Maestra by Alice Hilton. And Whisper by Lynette Noni. So they're my 4 options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Mac to pick now out of popular books, and then I'll get him to pick out of most recent purchases. Okay, go. Pride and Prejudice it is. Never by Jessa Hastings. Okay, so I just got him to pick. For the prompt of a popular book, he picked Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which is on my 26 books I want to read in 2026. So this one I'm really glad he actually picked because I need to get to it. And I've obviously heard incredible things. And then for most reached a purchase in the last 5 months, he picked Never by Jessa Hastings, which I enjoyed. Magnolia Park. I didn't rate any of them a 5-star, I don't think. I could be completely wrong, but I've really wanted to read this one. I think it's a retelling of Peter Pan, so I'm really intrigued. And yeah, I've wanted to read this for like years now, so I'm very intrigued. So this is the 3rd book on my TBR. Now I'm going to pick my own prompts, and I'll pick because he's getting distracted. A book that starts with the first letter of your name. So A. Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm going to have many. I don't really think I'm going to have many. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Bodhi? Yeah. Is Allegiant or the Insurgent next? Allegiant. Yeah. Okay, these are my 3 options. All the Light We Cannot See, A Good House for Children, and Allegiant. I'm not even gonna lie, I don't really want to read any of them. I'm ready to not read this one. It hasn't really been on my cart too long, so I'm not really fussed about putting it back. But I'm not wanting to read All the Light We Cannot See yet. It's out of A Good House for Children and Allegiant. I'm not even gonna lie, this one does intrigue me. The Lacey said, but I kind of want to save it for like October, because in October I would like to read horror books or like scary books. I do think it is time for me to read the 2nd book in the Divergent series, only because I read Divergent quite some time ago, So I think I'm going to go with Allegiant by Veronica Roth. I can't remember what I rated Divergent, a 4 maybe? So I've really loved the Divergent movie, so I'm really excited to read this. But this is the 4th book on my June TBR, Allegiant by Veronica Roth. My 5th prompt. A sad/emotional book. Well, we have a couple of options. I mean, would you call Room sad? Because I know what this movie's about. It's kind of just disturbing though, isn't it? Well, I know who would be happy if they picked this one. Have Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. I do need to pick this book up soon, I feel like, because I read the other one a couple months ago. I really just don't know how am I supposed to know what book's that or not? I don't look at these things. I'm gonna have to research. I have 2 options for this because I can't be bothered looking up if any of the others are sad. We have, Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh, which obviously I haven't looked up if it's sad, but I'm assuming it's sad because all these books are sad. So that's an option. And my second option is Hunger by Michael Grant, which is the 2nd book in the Gone series. Now, this doesn't look like it'd be sad, but I looked it up because I want to read it, obviously. Is the Hunger book sad? And it says, widely considered a very dark, sad, and emotionally heavy book. As the 2nd installment in the Gone series, it features intense themes like starvation, intense stress, violence, and character deaths that make for a depressing and bleak atmosphere. What I'm hearing is I should read Hunger. Taming 7 hasn't been on my TBR yet. That's why I feel like I should read Hunger anyway, because Hunger's been on my TBR one other month and I just didn't get to it in time, unfortunately, because I really wanted to read it. But I'm going to pick Hunger by Michael Grant for my 5th book on my June TBR because 1, I loved Gone. It was my first 5-star of the year, I believe. And secondly, I have a lot of the other books in this series, so I really want to get to them this year. So I feel like it's a good time to read Gone. So don't hate me, Lacey, but I'll get to Taming 7 eventually. 6th and final prompt is a book with a pretty cover. Okay. I literally said I'm not going to judge a book by cover anymore, but I'm going to now, obviously. We have Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands by Heather Fawcett, which I read Encyclopedia of Fairies, I believe, in April. I think in April. And I really enjoyed it. I think I rated like a 4 point something. This is obviously a gorgeous cover. Then we have The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, which I've had on my TBR card another month as well. And I didn't get to it. But Lacey loved this book, hence why I wanted to read it so much. But I think this cover's quite pretty. With all of like the flowers and roses and stuff. I like it. This one's more basic, kind of pretty, but this is Emma by Jane Austen, which I just like the cover. I hate movie covers usually, I really do. And I don't particularly like real life people on covers. Like, I hate this cover, I'm not gonna lie, but this one I quite like. So that's an option. And then The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, which I also really like this cover. I can't really particularly see any other covers I really love on my card. So I think they're the options. If we're sticking on the theme of books I've had on my cart before, and on my TBR I've got 2, I'm going to pick The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, because it does sound right up my alley, this book. And I believe it's like a fantasy. I believe people describe this low-key as Bridgerton, but darker. I've never seen Bridgerton, so I can't tell you really. But I'm kind of looking at my TBR though, and honestly this would probably be one of the last books I choose to read on it. But I'm going to put it on my cart again, on my TBR again, and hope, fingers crossed, that I get to it. So this is the 6th book on my TBR, The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. These are the 6 books I've got for my June TBR. The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, Hunger by Michael Grant, Allegiant by Veronica Roth, Never by Jessa Hastings, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I feel like that's a very good TBR, and I'm honestly excited to get to a lot of these books. Right off the bat, I'm most excited for Hunger, Never, and Pride and Prejudice, but other than those 3, I'm really still intrigued by them all. So I can't wait to give you my update throughout the month or at the end of June of what I get to. So Thank you so much for watching another wrap up and TBR, and I hope to see you again soon for a brand new video. Bye!